You are listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with Steve Worsley, the toxic mold expert and your number one source for mold consulting and mitigation in the USA. Let's dive into a brand new episode. Before we get started on this episode, here's a not so short disclaimer. While all attempts have been made to verify the content provided in this podcast, neither the podcaster or the producers assume any responsibility for errors, omissions, or alternative interpretations of the issues discussed here. All information stated in this podcast is the opinion of Steve Worsley. Steve Worsley is a mold specialist with over 25 years of experience in the construction and mold industry. The Toxic Mold Podcast is for information sharing purposes only. The views expressed are those of the podcaster and his alone. These views should not be taken as expert instruction or commands. While there may be references to medical conditions and symptoms, all podcast episodes are the opinion of Steve Worsley, and any medical questions or concerns shall be addressed with the appropriate licensed medical professional or professionals. As the podcaster refers to different mold types, please be aware that Steve Worsley is not a microbiologist, and questions concerning mold specifics should be answered by the appropriate professional. Steve isn't, nor does he offer any legal advice. For any legal advice, you must speak with a lawyer. The listener is 100% responsible for his or her own actions. You can check out Steve's books on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search for author Steve Worsley. You can also take Steve's courses on Udemy or Skillshare, and you can find out more about those at cnccontractorservices.com. Now, let's get to the episode.
Hello, you're listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with myself, Steve Worsley, and my wife. How's it going?
Good. How's it going?
It's just another day. We've been on the road for like the last month, it seems like, so...
Yeah, lots of travel for mold.
Yeah, Colorado was a lot longer trip than we thought it would be. But anyhow, today's topic is what's an SPC? Do you know what an SPC is?
Yes, I do, but I don't know that everybody else knows what an SPC is.
So it's a small particle cleaning. It's something I see quite often on social media. And it's something I wanted to talk about it just because there's a lot of people that believe an SPC is something you can do to mask the mold concerns in a home. And there's other people that think, you have to do this. So it's just something I wanted to talk about and explain to our listeners, like the importance of it, but on the other hand, what my take is on it.
And so small particle cleaning is something people should do at what point?
They should do it I would recommend it after remediation.
Okay. And what is it? I mean, why would somebody want to do a small particle cleaning or SPC?
So when we do mold remediation, we set up containments and we have a neutral containment or decon chamber, whatever you want to call it. When we're finished, we do a small particle cleaning in both the containment and that neutral zone. We don't do a small particle cleaning throughout the entire home. It's something a lot of times, most of my clients, I don't do the SPC because it's very detail oriented and it costs a lot. I mean, it's not a couple $1,000s.
Does it just clean the home? I know a lot of people might be listening to this and thinking, well, why can't I just hire a carpet cleaning company to do that?
Well, because like I said, it's very detail oriented. There's things we look at like couches, mattresses, carpet. Once again, this is outside of our containments. Everything inside of our containments, we throw away. Mm-hmm. But when you get to the SPC, a lot of what we're going to do with the personal belongings, like a couch, pictures, all that stuff, depends on the material that it is. Does that make sense? So we're not just cleaning carpets, or we're not doing just a deep clean.
And so really with your mold expertise, you would know which things need what level of cleaning.
Correct. And, the SPC, if we do what I call a toss out, that's literally we get rid of all the personal belongings, so stuffed animals, toys, furniture, all of that stuff. That's part of an SPC sometimes, if that's what the client wants. So we have to get a container there, depending on the size of the home, it would depend on how big of a container we get. There's also SPCs where we don't do a toss out per se.
So how would you decide which SPC you do a toss out for versus which ones you wouldn't?
Typically, I'm not the one that gets to decide that.
Okay.
It's the client or the homeowner. So some of my clients are like, yeah, get rid of everything. Some are like, no, let's just clean what's inside the home.
And so when in terms of the SPC, how long does it take? I know some people might say, hey, I want to have that done, but how long are they away from their home?
I would say for a typical 3 to 4 bedroom home with, 2 bathrooms and a living room and kitchen and dining room, it's probably going to be another 3 to 4 days.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so, but you wouldn't suggest that people do an SPC before they remediate mold?
Correct. I would not. In my opinion, you're just wasting your time. But if you have the proper containments up, which typically a professional is going to do that, then maybe I would say, okay, you might be able to get away with it, but I would never recommend doing it prior to remediation.
Okay. And would you say that if somebody has done remediation, how long between completing remediation should they wait before they do an SPC?
Oh, I wouldn't wait at all. I would do it right at the end of it.
Okay. And so then what's the benefits of doing an SPC?
So for the most part, what we're trying to do is get rid of the mycotoxins. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of cross-contamination and all that stuff, but we want to get rid of all of the mycotoxins. And where the mycotoxins are typically going to be is in the dust.
Okay.
So is it just us dusting? No. An SPC is done. We establish containments and negative air for each area we're doing.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just we go in and dust or we just HEPA vacuum. There's a lot of work that goes into it.
Wow. So can you explain sort of your process for doing an SPC? Because again, I think sometimes people say, well, we'll just do a deep clean over the weekend of the house.
Yeah, and I want to be clear with our listeners, I'm not telling them how to do it, nor am I going to give them every step that we take. But for the most part, let's just say it's a normal home, has a couch and, a love seat, mattresses. We would get rid of the personal belongings first that our client wants us to get rid of. Sometimes they don't want us to. So we just cover that stuff in plastic. We HEPA vacuum, we fog. Obviously, like I said earlier, we set up a containment. So we have negative air machines, which is air scrubbers. After we've done the HEPA vacuuming, we do a damp wipe, then we do a dry wipe with microfiber towels. The chemicals we use, a lot of times, it depends on the sensitivities of our clients. So if they're very sensitive to VOCs, we're going to try to use, less invasive chemicals that the off-gassing is not a lot. And then once we're done with all of that, with the small particle cleaning, we do air testing just to see, what the air test results look like. We don't do any EMA testing or dust sampling, just because we've cleaned everything. So there's no dust. There's really nothing to test.
Absolutely. So what do you say to people who say, well, I thought doing mold remediation was going to get rid of mycotoxins?
Yeah, the problem with that is the mycotoxins themselves are a totally different entity to the mold spores and colonies.
Okay.
So just to kind of go over that quickly so our listeners understand, when we have a mold infestation, if it's a toxigenic mold species, it has colonized. If obviously it has to be toxigenic, it creates mycotoxins, then it releases those mycotoxins. Once those mycotoxins are released, they're going to go anywhere throughout the home.
Okay. So literally, like, you could have a mold infestation in a bedroom, but the mycotoxins that toxic mold might have released have probably gone everywhere in the house.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And it depends, if it's a home that doesn't have forced air, so it doesn't have a furnace, let's say it's just radiant heat or it's electric baseboard heat, the mycotoxins still are probably going to end up everywhere throughout the home. But if you have forced air, an air handler, it's most likely going to be everywhere in the home.
Absolutely. So literally, it's like you might remediate the mold in the bedroom, but you still haven't dealt with all the mycotoxins that have spread throughout the home unless you do an SPC.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, part of an SPC, once again, every situation's unique, but part of an SPC is typically the duct cleaning at the end of that. So, but sometimes we do that with remediation. Once again, it's hard to tell our listeners, well, you have to do this, this, and this, and it all has to be done by the mold remediation company. Like, we don't clean ducts. Mm-hmm. We advise our clients of how they should be done, but that's not a step that we take. But my point is like, that's part of the process. It's just not something that CNC Contractor Services typically does.
Well, and that leads me to a question of how do you know that you're picking the right company to do an SPC?
Well, I would say that they should be a mold remediation company.
Okay.
Now, on the other hand, just because they're a mold remediation company doesn't mean that they know how to do that. So that's a difficult question really to answer. Most of my clients, as you know, we don't do the SPC. Mm-hmm. It's too expensive for the most part. Well, I shouldn't say for the most part. We don't let them stay in the home while we're doing an SPC. Can they? They can. I just don't recommend it. But that's another, let's say, 3 to 5 days they can't be in their home. So most of the time, they just go hire a cleaning company.
Okay. But a cleaning company doesn't have the knowledge and the expertise, so they may or may not be doing the right things.
Correct. And even if a cleaning company has the knowledge, I doubt they have the negative air machines and the experience to set up true containments and set up negative air.
Absolutely. So a lot of people feel like, man, I spent so much money on trying to deal with mold. Is it really worth it to spend whatever an SPC is going to cost to deal with the mycotoxins? What is your answer to that?
Well, I mean, that's a difficult thing for me to answer because I don't understand their finances. But for the most part, I guess what you're asking is, can you skip the SPC?
Or is it worth it? From an expert perspective, do you feel like it's worth it for
Absolutely.
people to do an SPC? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, but like I said, most of my clients don't do it just because of the cost involved. Mm-hmm. I mean, depending on the size of the home, you're talking another $10,000, $20,000.
Absolutely.
Because it's, like I said, a typical 3 to 4 bedroom home, 2 bathrooms, 1 living room. It's going to take 3 to 4 days to do it. So if you talk about, a larger home that has, 4 bathrooms, a couple of half baths, 2 living rooms or a living room and a family room, or a home that has tall ceilings, like it's going to take much longer to do. So it's not we go in and have it done in one day.
Absolutely.
Kind of
it's a process. So what's your call to action for people?
We just talked about, does the remediation company have to do the SPC? No. So our listeners, if you do routine deep cleanings, meaning you're wiping everything down, you're dusting, you're HEPA vacuuming your couches, do those routinely, and that will help the indoor air quality.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's also important for people who are listening, especially if this is the first episode of the Toxic Mold podcast you're listening to know that you do work with clients out of state. You do SPCs and travel to do them, but you also do virtual mold consultations to help them figure out if this is something they need to do.
Yep. Yeah, we have, if you go to our website, cnccontractorservices.com, we have digital bundles, I have books, I have consultation packages, I have EMA testing packages. There's all sorts of stuff that I can do. So go to our website. Like I said, it's cnccontractorservices.com, and you can see all of our services. Thank you for listening and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you go to our website at cnccontractorservices.com and sign up for the mold investigation checklist. Again, go to cnccontractorservices.com and get your free mold investigation checklist today. You can also, on cnccontractorservices.com, find out more about Steve's courses and books and consultations. Once again, go to cnccontractorservices.com.